We can bring peace in sight.
Since 1960, the U.S. government has had a trade embargo against Cuba, which has brought much hardship to the Cuban people. In recent years, Pastors for Peace have challenged the embargo by taking caravans of humanitarian goods to Cuba without requesting a U.S. government license. Each caravan has been held up by U.S. customs officials, but all of the goods ultimately were released and reached Cuba. The seventh caravan, designated as specifically for the children of Cuba, was scheduled to cross the Peace Bridge from Buffalo, New York to Fort Erie, Ontario on May 14, 1997, and thence to Montreal for shipping to Havana. Everybody wondered what would happen. Would the U.S. government seize the goods? Would customs officials attack Pastors for Peace as they did in January 1996? Would fasting or some other peaceful protest be necessary to persuade the government to release the goods? As the caravan approached the Peace Bridge, hundreds of supporters came to witness the crossing with high anticipation.
My name is Barb Neff. I'm with the National People's Campaign, and we're here at the Fort Erie Peace Bridge waiting for the Pastors for Peace caravan to go over to bring supplies to Cuba. And the National People's Campaign is here to support the people of Cuba, to demand that the United States end the blockade, and to support the sovereignty of both the native nations here in the United States as well as the Cuban people.
My name is Munanam, and I represent United American Indians of New England. We're an organization out of Boston that does the National Day of Mourning every year in Plymouth. We've done that for 27 years. We're here today to show our support for the people of Cuba and to demand that the United States lift the blockade. The people of Cuba have determined that the system that they want to live under, they have the right to determine that. And just as is happening here in New York State on the native reservations, the state is trying to dictate what sovereign people should do on their own land. And that's basically why UAINE, or United American Indians of New England, is here. And we're just here to stand in support with the people of Cuba and to say that this blockade has got to end, and we demand that the United States lift the blockade.
My name is Ed Wolkenstein. I'm the contact person for the Buffalo Committee to Free Mumi Abba Jamal. That's my most immediate political general interest. But I'm also involved with, and have been, as a matter of fact, I've been to Cuba twice. And I found the country a wonderful country to visit. I think that the embargo against Cuba is a crime. It's actually a kind of genocidal concept that the United States government is pursuing towards these people, and unfortunately they've done that towards other people. And I am totally opposed to it, and I think that there should be free trade so that the Cuban people can pursue their own lives and build a country that they feel that they're entitled to. We always prattle about free elections in this country and a free society. Well, the people that tell you that things are not free in Cuba got a very distorted concept of what freedom is, in my opinion. And I think that the blockade should be lifted. Cuba should be allowed to have normal relations with all the countries of the world.
Come on. heading down Porter. They're starting me signs for the peace.
Off Niagara onto Porter.
That's the caravan?
Sounds like it.
Aha, they're heading this way then.
My name is Kathy Lemke, and I'm against the embargo on Cuba because I think it serves no purpose and is cruel.
A London taxicab led the caravan.
We're bringing the truth. We're trying to stamp out truth decay in the United States as it relates to Cuba. We will continue to do the caravan. We will continue to do legislative work in Washington. There are about 100 of us on this segment of the caravan. There are another 50 persons who will be on the caravan when it leaves San Diego. And as you can see, we have several hundreds of volunteers who are back at the office, who are out here on the streets, and thousands of people who have given the aid which we're carrying. We truly believe that we are a people's movement. We're the wave of the future. We're fully confident that ultimately our work is going to contribute to the ending of this policy of death, just as our work for disinvestment and divestment in South Africa resulted in the democracy that we now have in South Africa. My name is the Reverend Lucius Walker. I'm the Executive Director of the Interreligious Foundation, Pastors for Peace. The name is spelled L-U-C-I-U-S. This is the chairman of my board of directors and another member of our board, people who have made a policy decision that we will continue to do this work until the blockade is ended.
Thank you, Reverend Walker.
This is Reverend Skylar Rose and Miss Marilyn Clemens.
Well, we can get this anyway.
We're from a Christian community called the Bruderhof, and we want to send love to the children of Cuba. The children here raised over $20,000, and they all personally wrote to Fidel Castro and said, Fidel, America paints you like a monster. We want to come to Cuba and find ourselves. And most likely Fidel Castro will meet us at the airport. And so we look forward to seeing him and bring a first-hand report to America what Cuba is really like.
I'm with Let Cuba Live in Maine. This is my third trip across the Peace Bridge. It's my fourth caravan altogether. And I'm absolutely thrilled that we are going to be validating the work of Lucius Walker that he did last year in that fast. And this is our stamp that we're putting on that 94-day fast and taking these new computers now down to schools in Cuba.
Yes, excellent.
Yeah.
What is your name?
Judy Robbins.
Where are you from again?
Maine.
Bambi Jones from Alna, Maine. And I'm here in support of the people who are going to Cuba. I was there in January and was very impressed with the wonderful social services and educational opportunities and healthcare services that they provide to their people. And people seem to come first in that country, and it's pretty wonderful.
My name's Chris Lubianski. I'm living in Buffalo from Michigan. And I'm here because I believe that using food and medicine as a political weapon is immoral. And so any law along those lines needs to be broken.
And you're in the caravan?
I'm going to Cuba. Yep.
Excellent. Okay.
I'm Tom Harris. I'm from Rochester, New York. I'm here with a contingent of people from there. I'm on this particular expedition because Lucius Walker was in our town 6 months ago. And I began to feel guilty. I hadn't done this long before. And I said, I'll see you on the next trip. And so having said that, here I am.
Right.
Hadn't been for us, folks, you and me, we'd simply send the Marines into Nicaragua.
Sure.
We'd send the Army into Cuba.
Sure.
Take care of this colony. They don't dare do that today.
Right.
They got to take more devious ways, which in a way is a compliment.
We're going to Cuba.
You going to Cuba?
Breaking the blockade.
Yeah. Okay.
This is my brother.
This your brother?
Yep. We don't look alike because we all believe the same way.
Because you had different mothers and fathers, too.
Yeah, well, we both come originally from Africa, but that's pretty far back.
Yes, what are you guys here for? What do you hope will be the results of this?
That will end the U.S. blockade against
Right.
Cuba, of course.
Yeah.
Hope they get enough media attention here to do it.
This is a long caravan. Look at there. It goes all the way down. Yeah, victory!
Boys
I'm with Pax Christi Group in Rochester. That's part of the International Catholic Peace Movement. And we're always working for justice and peace. And we're glad to be here. We're glad the caravan has gone through. And we realize that it's an embarrassment to the government that we are not letting supplies through to Cuba. And when people are willing to point up the situation, then the embarrassment finally makes the government move and let the supplies go through. It's a win-win situation for the people who are getting supplies across. And now the next thing we have to do is break the embargo on Iraq, because that is killing 4,500 children a month. And this is just the young children. And the conditions there are deplorable. The children are walking in sewage. They're drinking polluted water with sewage in it. And they don't have medical supplies or electricity in hospitals. And people are starving. We have to break the Iraq embargo.
Well, there's black babies. Black babies.
I do think.
Yeah. Well, you do that. Black
Yeah. I don't know. Who did it? Time was I'll get it.
Well, my name is Catherine Clements, and we are three folks from Minneapolis, Minnesota, here on the U.S.-Cuba Friendshipment Caravan.
Hi, my name is Scott Patterson.
Hi, my name is Toby Gable.
We've traveled from Minnesota with a school bus donated by a rural Minnesota town, with 80,000 pairs of eyeglasses donated by a northern Minnesota town, over $750,000 worth of goods aimed for Cuba now that we've made it across the Peace Bridge into Canada, which we are just excited about.
Yeah.
Yes. We have one very special person with us, Toby, who's 17, is here. He's going all the way to Cuba on this caravan for the children of Cuba.
Sure. I just like to say how happy I am we made it all, with minimum hassle, and just happy to be going to Cuba.
Great.
And we will all continue to protest this immoral blockade, this immoral policy by the U.S. until it is broken, until the policy is ended.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, you're on.
My name is Marilyn Fonville, and I'm a member of Lucius Walker's Church, and our church supports him 100%, and I'm just here to give my support for the border crossing, and he's a great pastor.
Specialist in children's medicine, and she was studying the effects of the embargo on children's medicine. And she made a report at my invitation to Niagara Regional Council, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. It drove home to me more than anything else that no country, no matter how big or how powerful or how strong it thinks it is, has any right to do this to other people. Right on. Thank you very much for what you're doing on our behalf.
Our next speaker is Ron Boyer. Ron is a member of the Canadian Auto Workers Union and with its Peace and Disarmament Committee. The Peace and Disarmament Committee has been active in aid for Cuba in solidarity work and is responsible for some of the food that you have here today. They also just had a meeting in regard to Cuba about a couple of weeks ago. It was very successful.
Thank you, Eric. Can everyone hear? I'd like to bring you greetings from Local 199, CAW St. Catharines. I'd like to say something on behalf of what I'm using in my hand right now. I can thank Grandpa Bear from the U.S. for loaning us this loudhailer. I think it's only appropriate since they loaned us the continent as well. So thank you very much. Really, I think I've been to Cuba, and I'd like to, it's very heartwarming, very gratifying to me to see as many people here as there are, and all supportive, of course, of our cause. This is very important. The one group that I do note by their absence is the press. And this is something that I've noticed quite a number of times when we have these meetings. And even a highly successful meeting that we had at our local is the absence. One person. Now, basically, this is reflective of what's happened in Canada in the last few years, and that's control of the media. We are faced with not only government control, but also control by a gentleman called Conrad Black, who owns approximately 70% of the media in Canada. Also the Southern news agencies. This is the kind of control that we've got to face, and we've got to understand what is happening in this country. Now, what are we getting? We're getting spin doctors, we're getting publicists, we're getting people that are controlling the news, not reporting the news. This is a very important meeting, and you won't read about it in the newspapers tonight unless it's maybe a minute sound bite. Well, thank you very much, and at this time, I'd like to introduce the candidate from the St. Catharines riding for the New Democratic Party. Now, Ed Gould is president of the St. Catharines District Labor Council, and he's been very active in our riding, and he's very progressive as far as situations such as this, help for Cuba and so on. So, Brother Ed Gould, I'd like you to take over right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron, and warm welcome to everyone here this morning. It's lunchtime, actually. Just thinking right now, if Bob White was here, he would be saying thanks very much for coming out, and I can really say that the CLC does back this program, and I'm very concerned of what's happening in Cuba these days. I can really honestly say that if you have a government and you have a United Nations. Okay. And the United Nations is saying that they shouldn't have this embargo on this small country, and yet the American politicians, not the people, it's American politicians that are forcing those people down there to starve. And we really must think about that, because it's going on right in our own country. Social justice anywhere in the world is important to all of us, because it's only us standing up to governments like this that we can take these issues on. And with that, I'd like to announce the other NDP candidate here for this region, William Hendrick, and he's been a long time social activist himself. So thank you very much.
Thanks, fellow candidate. I'd like to say something for Cuba as well in a different way. I've been very active in the time that Nicaragua was being oppressed and still is being oppressed by the same United States Tories, as I call them. They are Tories, all of them. And they want you to say uncle. Uncle Sam, that is. We want you, country, to be ours. That is what they try to do. That's what they did to Nicaragua. They forced them to say uncle. In the same way as they are trying to do with Cuba now. I think we should, as Canadians, we should gather all together and be true social democrats and fight for the Cubans as well as for the Nicaraguans, for all those people, and for our fellows, friends down south here, right in America. They are being ruled and being bullied by these Tories. Let's keep the name of Canada high. Let's not drag it down into the mud with those Tories from the States. Save Canada as well, so we can help Cuba and we can help our people, friends down south of the border, and show them what a true social democracy looks like. Please get your brains together. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Tony Casavani from England.
Hello, and thank you very much for the warm invitation that we had. And we should do this more and spread the word and make broaden the awareness of what's going on and increase the solidarity with Cuba, because it's quite dreadful, to say the least, that one mighty country, this superpower of the United States, prevents medicines and food going into a third world country. And lots of Americans I talk to back in London are anti the embargo, and I believe that the threat to the United States is that Cuba is a good example, and that's what they're afraid of. It's a good example. They have free health care. It's universal. They have an excellent education system. And yet my American cousins tell me there's many people in America that's illiterate. And sadly in Britain we have criticism of children coming out of schools that can't read and write correctly. So Cuba is a good example. And as long as we keep the good work up, spread the campaign and get stronger and stronger.
It was our total effort that broke the blockade today. And so all of you are to be congratulated. I love every one of you, and I appreciate your commitment, your discipline, and your willingness to put yourselves on the line for what we believed in. We still believe in it. And all of you who are going to Cuba, we look forward to seeing you in Cuba when we arrive. I think you'll arrive a little before those of us from San Diego. And so keep the fire burning, keep the lights on, and we'll be there about 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. Great. Let me say one other thing. A number of you have asked, why do you think we got through today? What happened? What's the significance of it? Our two chief lawyers, New York and one who lives in Puerto Rico, but who has been close to this work, both of them. The lawyer in Puerto Rico is the most effective, experienced grand jury lawyer in the country, in the U.S. And they have watched and they have been in communication with the government officials, federal attorneys, members of the Treasury Department, and their take on this is that last year's campaign was a high water mark. The impact on them of the fast, and not just the fast, but the campaign that was built around that fast, made them to know that they're really dealing with a groundswell of popular opposition to the blockade, and that in a real sense, we represent the majority will of the United States public. And even though they still have this despicable job to do, they have grown to have a certain kind of respect for you and for your counterparts around the country and around the world. They have come to know that this is an international movement. They were stung last year, not just by the disciplined, resolute, continuous campaign by those in the United States, but from around the world. They took note of the fact that when they took 400 computers that were being carried by U.S. citizens in other countries in the world joined together and filled the gap by committing to Cuba 1,400 computers. They saw that there is such a deep commitment in this movement that there is literally nothing we will do, nothing that we will allow to prevent us from continuing to express our solidarity with Cuba. And because of that, they reached a new level of respect for this movement. And they, our lawyers, have reasoned, secondly, that because of their own intelligence, they knew that this caravan had taken as its theme a caravan for children, and that they could not stand the public relations black eye of stopping a caravan for children, especially in light of the fact that the Treasury Department is now reeling from the revelations of its own agents taking bribes from narcotics traffickers in Mexico. They've been stung by that. And they're fighting to try to clean up their image. So what you saw today was a little bit of damage control, as well as respect for a movement that has acquitted itself as well as we have. I think we have to add to those speculations that the government knew that there was no way that we would allow them to take and keep this aid, that we would do what we did last year. And that would mean perhaps a 9-month or 12-month campaign, an attack upon their credibility. And they reasoned that in the face of a people united who would not be defeated, they could limit the damage to their image by allowing us to go through, looking the other way, having one day of negative media rather than stopping us and knowing how capable we are of giving them a full year of negative media and then getting the aid on top of that. So But whatever the reason, what we have to do is claim our victory. We have to know that we stood up against the strongest nation in the world. We met them at the bridge. We looked eyeball to eyeball, and they blinked. We have to know that, if we use the boxing analogy, we're in this for the championship, no matter how many rounds it takes. And we've been slugging it out with them, and we've won every round. And so they decided not to come out for the 7th round. And therefore, we have to know that we have just executed a technical knockout of the United States government. Now, but the implications cannot be lost on us. The implications of what happened today are mind-boggling. We, with their full knowledge, took prescription medicines, computers at the higher level of 386s, Pentiums, and we said to them we were taking them. And when they said, go anyway, we insisted at that border that they go on record, audio and tape recording, that they were telling us to go. They didn't want to give it up, but we got their little speech. It's not a long speech, but it's significant. It says, based on your communications with the Department of the Treasury, we sent them the same list of aid that we sent to everybody. You and your entire caravan may proceed across the bridge. Well, our board members who were here met yesterday. When it began to be clear that this might conceivably happen, and we were not prepared to fully believe it, even as we said to you, but one of the conclusions that our board came up with is that if indeed we make the historic breakthrough that we've made today, that we ought then to declare the floodgates of aid open and appeal to all of the churches, the labor unions, the educational organizations, all of the solidarity organizations. Unfortunately, there are some of those who have joined in track 2 by asking the government for permission, for a license to take aid. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the time for us to say to all of them, we don't have to ask permission. And if we all got together and did a massive caravan, we could fill up a whole boatload of aid in Canada and in Mexico. We could have thousands of people marching across the border, saying to the U.S. government, to hell with your blockade. We will not be intimidated. We will not be complicit in a policy of death. Do what you will to us, but we will fight you and we will win. And let that be the message that we take back home and around the world. We have the power to end this blockade. And this may be, in their view, the 7th round, but let us be resolved that we have only just begun to fight. and we'll continue to fight until the blockade is ended. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I think it would only be appropriate to say that not only does Cuba owe Pastors for Peace and the Caravanista a great debt of gratitude, that we in Canada do also. We recognize what a tremendous struggle it must be in the United States. We don't face the same thing here. There is certain opposition in this country to helping Cuba, but not the sort of thing that you have in the United States of America. And we thank you for the tremendous amount of effort you put into it and the courage that you have. We have Bill Grandpa Bear Swanson, Executive Director of the New York chapter of the American Indian Movement.
I'm here today on behalf of the National American Indian Movement in the state of New York to voice my support and solidarity for the people of Cuba. Long live Cuba. But I'm also here today to tell each and every one of you that the struggle is not just in Cuba. The struggle is right here in Canada and the United States of America. As a Native person, we've been oppressed people for over 500 years. And I've heard mention of a border here. The Native people, there is no border. Our people traveled across that river in canoes long before the landing here at Plymouth Rock. The United States government and the Canadian government, they're the ones that made the border. I'm here to thank the Canadian government for allowing this caravan to welcome you over here to Canada. But I want to let you know that this is Ongwe country. This is not Canada's country. This country you're standing on, I'm going to tell you something. For the past few years, we've uncovered the bones of my people right in this area, all the way down to that bridge. We've had very many ceremonies here. I thank Canada for welcoming you here today. But I'm here to let you know that like the United States government, the Canadian government has broken every treaty that they ever made with my people. We are still standing up for our rights. We are still strong as a people. But I'm here to tell you today that we all have a struggle. But we all must join together as one to face these struggles, because that's the only way that we're going to be successful. When you get to Cuba, I want you to deliver a message from Grandpa Bear that the American Indian Movement from the east to the west coast across Canada stands in solidarity and support with Fidel Castro, all the people of Cuba. And I would be remiss before I left here if I didn't say something on behalf of my brothers and my sisters who are behind the iron bars in prison as we stand here today. And I speak about Leonard Peltier. I speak about Mumia Abu Jamal. I speak about Geronimo Pratt. And I speak about all the Puerto Rican political prisoners. Long live Cuba. And I want to thank the Creator for this beautiful day here today. Have a safe journey, and I hope to meet with you again along the way. Nyawit.
But we are here to stand in solidarity with our sisters and brothers in Cuba. And I want you all to keep in mind one thing. No government has the right to dictate to any other people how they shall live.
Hey, I'm Marilyn Clement from the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and also something called Sister to Sister, which is a women's outreach from the whole hemisphere of women to the women of Cuba. And we took our first delegation to Cuba over the Christmas holidays, 80 women. We're following up with a conference in Cuba next year, April 1998, and that will be supported by, co-sponsored by the Federation of Cuban Women, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and WIDF. And it's an international conference sort of following up on Beijing. I want to say how important it is to us to be related to Pastors for Peace. I'm also on the board of Pastors for Peace, and it's just such an incredible organization, and because of the work that they've done and their integrity and their willingness to stick to this struggle, we've had a wonderful victory today. And I think we need to say to people very clearly that in many ways we have broken the embargo. We've made a major crack in it today. And people need to follow up on that, not get licenses, go to Cuba, travel without licenses, and take things like prescription medicines and computers, the kinds of things that they've tried to stop us from taking in the past, but have now shrugged their shoulders and said, okay, go ahead, because of the kind of strength of this movement. I wanted to say, and what I did say a few minutes ago was an insight that I have about why Cuba is seen as so dangerous and who really benefits by this embargo. And it's not the U.S. government, it's the corporations who really benefit by it. And the way they benefit by it is, they want everybody, basically our necks under their feet. And they want every worker in every country to, be desperate for a job and to do whatever the corporations want to do. And so what's happened is that Cuba has said no. We have a very high priority, and our priorities are what I think are women's priorities, women's values. And it has to do with education, a very good, equal education for every child, health care for all, good jobs, close to equal pay, as close as possible, without the CEOs making huge amounts of money and the rest of us, under their foot. And so we think that one of the things that happens is that Cuba will not bend to the corporate will to be in control of every place in the world. And Cuba continues to say, if you want to do business in Cuba, then we set the rules. And that's just, anathema to the world corporate global power that is now evolving and has evolved to such a high level. So I think that we have to fight that, and I think that we can do that by supporting Cuba in every possible way. And I think one of the songs that we sang in Beijing and in the Fourth World Conference on Women and on the Peace Train to Beijing is a song that is important in this context, and it's gonna keep on moving forward, gonna keep on moving forward, gonna keep on moving forward, never turning back, never turning back.
Thank you very much.
I didn't know I could do it.
Well, I'm going to Cuba because I came with the Pastors for Peace because I believe that the blockade against Cuba is immoral and criminal. I actually have a real affinity for the work of Fidel Castro. I think it's probably some of the most religious work that I've ever come up against in my lifetime. And I believe very strongly in the form of heaven on earth that he endorses. I'd also like to say that I'm going to Cuba because I'm really sick and tired of Michigan weather, and and just on a purely selfish motive, I'm looking forward to those temperatures and the sunny skies.
And where are you from?
I'm from Royal Oak, Michigan, which is right next door to Detroit, Michigan.
All of these Bruderhof children will be going to
Cuba with Pastors for Peace on this 7th caravan. There are 2 of their chaperones now, I think.
I'm Frida Meyer of the Bruderhof communities. We are a Christian community that tries to live like the early Christians, and we are very aware that justice is part of our Christian faith, that a Christian belief without the deeds of justice is a hollow belief. So we believe very much in being aware of the needs of people all around us, and Cuba has been brought to our attention through Pastors of Peace. And when our children heard Reverend Lucius Walker talk about the the caravan for Cuba, they got very inspired, and they asked us parents and teachers if they first of all could help carrying the boxes over the border, and then the next thing, like kids always are, they reach for the moon. They asked for actually going to Cuba. It sounded for us at the beginning at first quite an outrageous request because of the finances also, but they were willing to actually raise the money for it, and it's been a wonderful experience for them to write to hundreds and hundreds of people all across the country and receive support for this trip, so that in the end not only the money for their trip was raised, but enough money for buying medical supplies and school supplies. And each of these children carry a knapsack, a school bag with school supplies and like books and pencils and crayons and erasers and something like a frisbee or a toy, personally packed and personally earned to take to a child in Cuba as a symbolic gesture of children in America caring for children in Cuba. So we don't feel this as a political action, we feel it as a humanitarian action, child to child and person to person.
The 7th caravan, Friendshipment for the Children of Cuba, was delivered in Cuba, and the caravanistas spent a week enjoying the delightful people of that island nation and learning about their system of government and culture. Early in 1996, Reverend Lucius Walker Jr. and 4 other people participated in a fast that lasted for 94 days. The purpose of the fast was to protest the seizure of about 400 low-grade computers intended for use in a medical information system in Cuba. The fasters resolved that they would continue with the fast until their death or until the computers were released. Thanks to their courage, the computers are now in the Cuban Infomed system, and the U.S. is still under no threat of attack by Cuba. A relentless campaign of slander and hatred has been waged in the U.S. against Cuba ever since the Cuban Revolution. If you would like to hear the other side of the story, the truth about Cuba, please contact IFCO, Pastors for Peace, 402 West 145th Street, New York, New York 10031, or call area code 212-926-5757, or call Justice for Cuba Coalition, area code 313-561-8330.